So I have 2 children, a son that's almost 9 and a daughter that just turned 6 recently. And I breastfed both, but both times I provided my breast milk via pumping, so they got my milk in a bottle. Because my son wouldn't latch properly, we ended up at Children's Hospital when he was 4 days old because he was dehydrated. I had him at the breast, I thought he was nursing. He wasn't getting anything and I didn't know. So while we were at Children's, a lactation consultant came into the room and introduced me to the world of pumping. And so that was the route from there on out. I tried the Shield. I tried lots of.
Exquisite pumping is really hard.
It's so hard. I mean, I still would bring him to my breast on a pretty much daily basis, at least for the first several months, and he just didn't want that. He wanted the bottle, but I was bound and determined that he was going to get my breast milk. So yes, I pumped and I pumped and I pumped, and the hardest part were the nights because you can't pump laying down. You have to sit up. And so I brought up to the bedroom, I got a small like dorm size refrigerator and put it beside the bed, and I would get all my equipment ready for however many times I would have to pump through the night because initially it's like every 2 hours. And so at least I wouldn't have to get out of bed to do the pumping. And a lot of times I would have him on my lap and be able to feed him the milk that had just pumped while I'm still finishing up with pumping. And so I did that for a year, and then my daughter, I had to have emergency surgery right after she was born due to retained placenta, and so I was out of commission for a while, and so they gave her donor milk rather than formula, but still she was introduced to a bottle, and so it was the same thing. She didn't want to nurse directly from the breast, and I was like, no, but broke out that pump again, and it was a double breast pump, backpack, battery operated, so I could be mobile with it. I would load up to go into town, and I would pump in the car on the way to town because it was a 15-minute drive, and that was about how long it took. And I would bring my extra set of stuff so I could pump on the return trip to home because it was usually time I'd have my cooler with me. So yeah, and I remember when her first birthday was approaching. She was born in January, and on January 1st, I was able to get about 2 ounces from the pump, and my body was saying, you're done. But I was like, okay, it's her birthday month. Close enough. I could say I did it, for a year. And then it was that year that the derecho hit. I don't know if you remember. For those of you who may not know what a derecho is, I didn't know until I was in the middle of one. It was like a straight line tornado, and it wiped out power in southeastern Ohio for days and days. And my immediate thought when that hit and I realized we were out of power was, all my frozen breast milk is out there in the deep freezer in the garage. What do I do? And I called the lactation consultant at the hospital where my daughter had been born here at O'Bleness, and she's like, bring it here. Yeah. We have emergency generators. We'll keep it for you until however long. And so we were without power for 8 days, and so she kept all my milk.
That's awesome.
So it's like, it was not easy to do. So that's why I thought today talking about the trials and tribulations of breastfeeding would be a good topic, because it's not easy, and pumping is hard, but it can be done. So I will stop talking, and I will let you guys do some talking. So Amy, let's start with you.
Okay, so my daughter who's 5.5, I went into it not knowing what to expect, but always wanting, like, this is my goal, we're going to breastfeed because of the health benefits of it. So she latched on right away very easily, but her latch was very shallow, and she was a biter, and I became, like, my milk came in instantly after delivery, like it was engorged. So it was really difficult to have a biter and very large engorged breasts, and they don't need much milk in the beginning, so trying to get that out wasn't working. So then trying to find it was just a whole ordeal, trying to find the time to pump, and then I ended up with mastitis, and then she had been biting so much that I was bleeding. So then I had to stop breastfeeding for about 2 weeks and just use a pump for them to heal.
Yeah.
And was really worried that she wouldn't go back to breastfeeding, and was she getting enough food using the bottles, which she was fine, but hormones, and it's the first baby, and everything's going on. And so then she was able to nurse after that but then I had to get, because of her jaw alignment and just the way her tongue was positioned, we went in for manipulation, and that helped quite a bit to loosen it up. And then I just, even though I was still nursing her, had to pump in between feedings because I made so much milk, which then I ended up saving and then donating to the milk bank that was at Children's Hospital at the time in Columbus.
Wonderful. That's quite a commitment.
It was a lot of pumping. So people who pump, exclusive pumpers, I mean, that is huge, because not only are you doing the feeding, but then you're cleaning the supplies and carrying the pump. That's hard work.
Yeah.
Like
It's already double duty when
right.
you're pumping and feeding, and then all the cleaning, and it's tough.
It's really, it's really hard. And then the other weird thing, my daughter had the gamut with her. And then she also had, I had a ruptured, I guess it was like a ruptured blood vessel or something inside that I didn't know. So when she was nursing one time, it was just copious amounts of blood, and she was vomiting.
Oh my goodness!
Blood that I thought
I've not
was
heard
from
of
her.
that before. Oh,
so
that must have been terrifying.
Rushed to the hospital. We just went straight to Columbus, and they did an assessment, and they thought, well, she's fairly old. It wouldn't really be a tear or something in her. And they just watched, and they said, no, it must have been from you. And then I was pumping on the way there just to check maybe it was me, what was happening, and nothing. So she had consumed all of it that was at that time. So that does happen.
Wow.
But
Yeah, so you don't hear about these things before you have your first baby.
No.
And you think, I'm just going to breastfeed and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Easy.
So it probably took us about 6 months, I would say, with her to be in a good routine and system. And then my son...
were you able to move away from pumping?
Yeah, so that took about 2 weeks. But then I was also working at the time. So I would pump
at work.
Yeah. And because I had such a big supply, it wasn't that difficult for me to do it and feed.
Let's talk a little bit about pumping at work. Did they have space for you to do it in private? Was that...
I could have done it in my office if I wanted to, but I usually just wanted to check out and go somewhere. So sometimes there was a room. I worked at O'Blennis, so I could have went to the nursing room upstairs.
Okay.
But really, it would take me like 5 minutes, and I would have 8 ounces. So I would just go into the bathroom, which people are always like, "Oh, I have to go into the bathroom and pump because there isn't anywhere," which is not like a good right. And I was like, "Well, I just want to do it because I want to get it over with," and it was easy.
Yeah. Well, there's a gal that I work with here at OU, and she's breastfeeding, and there's no space designated in our office building, and so she found this area. It's like a little meeting area, but it doesn't have full walls. But she pulls a huge whiteboard across the opening and writes on it, pumping, please do not disturb, but you can hear the pump. But I'm like, kudos to her for finding a way to make it happen,
And I also used a hand pump too.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't
your milk came out so fast.
Yeah, and that was one of the problems too. Like when all of them were little, I had so much, and it was such a strong release that they would just start gagging. So I was like a cow. Like it was just.
So did you have towels and
to
a
soak
lot
up
of
leaking,
the extra?
a lot of breast pads to absorb the milk.
When did you wean her, or did she self-wean?
She self-weaned about 18 months because then I was pregnant with Leo. So she kind of started phasing out when the changes happened. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So you did bottle and breast
with Winnie. Yeah. Okay. She was both, and then he was mostly breast. We tried a bottle for a couple of months, but it was such a force for him, and I had stopped working at that point that it was just easier to not.
Did you feel more prepared the second time around, like going into breastfeeding?
I did, because of all of the problems and just knowing like these are the potential things that can happen, and it works itself out eventually. Just knowing the right people to go to and having the support and what you need to fix it.
Who did you go to during all this time?
I saw Anna Wright in town.
So she's a physician, a doctor of osteopathic medicine, and so she's the one who provided the manipulation that you mentioned.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was just like loosening the jaw and the tongue, and making it smoother instead of biting, then you can have a better suck.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're so fortunate to have Anna Wright in our community with her expertise with babies feeding in particular. That's you don't find that kind of expertise in many areas,
Right.
so we are very, very fortunate to have her here locally.
I so agree. I went to Anna too with my kids. So.
We all did.
Yeah.